Assalamualaikum. We'll start off from the very basic. This is going to be an orientation class for any of you who plans on appearing there in the IBA test or the CBM test or the SZABIST test. So please notice the test for the test date for the round 2 for IBA is 21st of June 2026. The dates are usually announced many months in advance, and the dates have already been announced. IBA test has two broad components, English and mathematics. Please notice in English we'll have 45 to 50 questions, and the time duration for English varies between 60 to 65 minutes. For maths, please notice the number of questions would vary between 45 to 50, and the time duration for maths is always 70 to 80 minutes. Occasionally there have been 90 minutes for maths as well, but you would usually find the time duration between 70 to 80 minutes. Please copy this if you have to, and we'll move forward. So what happens there is that in the English portion, we have 25 to 30 questions there. Same goes for the maths. In the series and GK we usually have 10 to 15 questions. These are the number of the questions Please copy this if you wish to, and we'll move forward. So for those of you who plan on taking the CBM or plan on taking IBS test, please notice regardless of the program that you plan on applying to, the test will be held on 21st of June, sorry, 22nd, my bad, it's 21st of June for this year. So this is for the last year, so the test will be held on 21st of June, regardless of the program that you plan on applying to, I'll talk about the grading how exactly the grading works. For IBA, then we'll talk about CBM as well. So assuming if you have 10 questions and if you get 7 of those questions right, so for every question that you get right, you'll be getting 4 points for that. So 7 times 4 would be 28, and then every question that you get wrong, there's no negative marking for that. So 3 times 0 would be 0 eventually, and your total points here would be 28. So there's no negative marking in IBS tests. There used to be once many years ago, but there isn't any negative marking anymore, Whereas in the CBM and SZABIST test, what happens is that for every question that you get correct, you get 3 points for that, not 4 points, but there's negative marking. There have been few attempts recently where they waived off the negative marking depending on certain circumstances. That happened during the COVID as well. But what's going to happen this time around isn't really confirmed, but there are chances that there would be negative marking. So for every question that you get incorrect, they basically deduct 1/3 points or 1/3 points, or let's say for every question that you get correct, you get 3 points for that, and for every question that you get wrong, they deduct 1 point for that. And in this case, assuming if you're getting 7 questions right and if you're getting 3 questions wrong, your net score would be 18 Please copy this if you have to and move forward then. So for those who wish to apply to both IBA and CBM, here's one important part I would want you to understand, which is cutoff. Then I'll talk about the CBM in the next 5 minutes as well. So IBA tests would usually have a cutoff. They always have a cutoff. Cutoff basically means passing marks, but please notice they are not pre-decided. So the cutoff would never be pre-decided, as in you would not know that what exactly the cutoff is going to be for this particular attempt. I'll explain this in the next 5 minutes. So let's say IBA says that you need 60 marks in English, 90 marks in maths, but your total marks would not be the sum of the two. So 60 plus 90 is usually 150, of course, but over here I've written 205. This basically means that you need 60 marks in English, 90 marks in maths, but your total score for the two sections should at least be 205 in order to clear the test. Likewise, if there's a student, let's just say if he has a score 80 in English, apparently he would be clearing the English portion. There's another student who has scored 100 in maths, so he's clearing the maths portion, but apparently he is not able to meet the total cutoff because he's failing the total cutoff by 25 marks, and thereby this student would be failing the test. Likewise, if there's another student who got 100 in English, so apparently he cleared the English cutoff. Again, he got 100 in maths, so he cleared the maths cutoff as well, but apparently he's again failing the test because he's not able to meet the total cutoff by 5 marks. So you have to be able to clear all three cutoffs for IBA beta. Let's just say if somebody is very good at English, and let's just say if he or she gets 140 in English, again the required marks for 60 only. This student again gets 80 in maths, and his total score here is 220, 15 marks more than the total cutoff. Yet this student would be failing the test. Why? Because he failed the maths portion by 10 marks. So please notice your very good performance on one section would not be able to make up for your poor performance on the other section. You have to be able to get at least 90 right, 90 marks there in maths beta. So you have to clear all three cutoffs. Likewise, if someone is good at maths, so this student would be getting 160. Again, this person is failing the English cutoff by 8 marks. Again, he's getting 7 more marks there in the maths portion. Yet this person would, in the total section, yet this person would be failing the test. Why? Because apparently this person failed the English portion. Likewise, beta, if you pay attention, this person or this kind of student would usually be able to clear the test because apparently he or she would be meeting all three cutoffs. So this person is meeting the English cutoff, meeting the maths cutoff, meeting the total cutoff. Likewise, same goes over here. This person is meeting the English cutoff, the maths cutoff, and the total cutoff beta. So the cutoff is not, like I said, pre-decided. It is always announced on the same day as your result beta. That's point number one. Point number two here is that you may come across a lot many people telling you that this would be the cutoff for this particular attempt. So please notice all such people are simply making it up. Nobody can guess the cutoff in advance. Even with all our experience, we cannot even judge the cutoff or tell the cutoff. We can only tell a fair estimate depending upon the difficulty level of a particular attempt. But please notice the cutoff is only announced by IBA, and it's announced on the same day as your result, and it's there in the same PDF as your result beta. Also remember that cutoff is always in terms of marks, never in terms of percentage. It's not fixed, it keeps on changing, and it depends on the difficulty level of the exam and how good the students are doing there on the given test day. So let's just say if you get a lot many kids who are doing very well on a particular test, so the cutoff will definitely go up. That means you have good competition, so the cutoff will go up. And if let's just say we have a lot many kids who are not doing well on the day of the test, so the cutoff is of course going to go down there. So these are the points that we must remember, that cutoff is always in terms of marks. It's not fixed. It again depends on the difficulty level of the test and how good the students are doing there on the test day, and it's announced on the same day as your result beta. I'll stop here beta in case if you have to take any notes here, please do. We'll move forward then. So for CBM, please notice we don't really have a cutoff for CBM or IoBM in general. CBM is actually a business school within IoBM. So we'll put IoBM there to avoid the confusion. So the result is always announced on their web portal You don't get to see your marks. And you only get to see whether you've passed the test or you've failed the test and whether you made it to the next round or not. So unlike IBA, you would not know what the other kids have scored. You would not know what you have scored. You would not know your marks for vocab section or reading comprehension or writing ability or problem solving or number letter series or GK. You would not know the individual marks there. Unlike IBS test, you will only get to see whether you pass the test or you fail the test, beta. And you for that again you have to go to their web portal. You need to put in your relevant details, and then you'd be able to see whether you've gotten in or you've passed the test or you failed the test. And if you pass the test, chances are you would be sitting the interview there, followed by a group discussion, because this time around IOBM, from this attempt, actually from round one, they've introduced interview and a group discussion. So that's a new thing for IOBM. So they did not used to have group discussion before, but from round one they have introduced a group discussion as well. This is for the students who are applying there in IOBM as well. But in case if you have to take any notes, please do, and then we'll move forward. So, but this is for IBA only. So let's see how the priorities work. Now, IBA would let you take the test of one of their schools in one attempt. So for the round two, I'll break it down. So you could either apply to the School of Business Studies and you can apply to all the programs there, or you could apply to the School of Mathematics and Science and you can apply to all the programs there, which is basically the two programs. And or you could apply to the schools of Economics and Social Sciences and you could apply to all of the programs there. But you cannot apply to all 8 programs there because some of the tests are not the same. In fact, for some of the programs, the tests are not the same. But we'll talk about that in the next half an hour. But let's see how the priorities work. So BBA, ACF, and Business Analytics, they all come under one school. Let's just say if you're interested in all 3 programs or you wish to apply to all 3 programs. So this is how the priority work. Hypothetically speaking, IBA would tell us that you need 16 English, 19 maths, and your total marks should be 205. Same goes for accounting and finance, except the total score here is 200, and then same goes for business analytics. Again, the total score here is 195. So assuming if you're someone who scored 196 and 196, and if you're filling out the form there, so what's going to happen here is if you wanted to apply to BBA, so ideally you should put BBA there on the top. That is your first priority. This is your first priority in a drop down menu. Then followed by that, but you should put accounting and finance, assuming if accounting and finance is your second priority. Likewise, if business analytics is your last priority, you'd be putting that there at last. So this really depends on what program you wish to apply to. So assuming if business analytics is your first priority, you should put that on the top and so on. So assuming if you wanted to apply to BBA, so IBA would see whether you're able to meet the cutoff for BBA or not. So assuming if you scored this, so IBA would see whether you're meeting the cutoff there for BBA or not, and apparently you're not because the total score required was 205, yours is 196. So what IBA would do is that IBA would see whether you're meeting the cutoff for the next priority there, which is accounting and finance. Again, you're not meeting the cutoff for the accounting and finance either because you're still 4 points short there. So IBA would see whether you're meeting the cutoff for your third priority, and in this case the third priority is this. So apparently you're meeting all 3 cutoffs and therefore you'll be admitted in this program. Now, it's recommended that we don't leave these fields blank, because if you leave any of these fields blank, let's just say if you want to pursue BBA, and if you leave the other fields blank, what's going to happen there is IBA would only be considering you for this program. They would not really be calling you or asking you in any way whether you would be interested in any of the other programs, because you simply did not make it clear to the IBA that you were interested or potentially interested in any of the other programs. So if you don't meet the cutoff for BBA, you will be failing the test. They will not be calling you. They will not be asking you. They will not be confirming with you whether you would like to pursue some other degree there at IB or not. So if you leave this field blank, so you're technically, again, if you don't meet the cutoff for BBA, so you will be failing the test altogether, and then you will have no chance, and then you'll simply have to wait for your next attempt, which is going to be round 1, 2027 beta. So it is recommended that you don't leave these fields blank. So even if you don't want to pursue any of these other degrees, let's just say even if you're not interested in any of these other degrees, do not leave these fields blank. Why? I'll talk about that in the next 5 minutes, beta. So let's just say if you want to pursue BBA, but somehow if you get admitted in business analytics, what you can do here is you can pursue this degree for the next 6 months. Let's just say you pursue this degree till December 2026, and then what you can do here is you can have your semester free, and once you have your semester frozen there, what we can do here is you can reset the test for round 1 2027, and you can then again meet the cutoff for your chosen degree, assuming if your chosen degree is BBA beta. And then if you meet the cutoff for BBA, so then you can have your credits transferred to the BBA program. That means you won't really have to start studying the BBA from scratch, because some of the courses will be transferred. Since in first semester, some of the courses, in fact most of the courses, can be easily transferred. The courses that cannot be transferred, we call them deficiency in IBA, and those courses have to be retaken by you, because those courses in a way will be a waste. So you'll have to retake those courses, because some of the courses will not be transferred. This would be done so that you could graduate on time, and this way you will not be wasting your semester. So once again, beta, if you're not able to meet the cutoff for your desired program, just get in any of the program, start studying that program. Make sure that you try maintaining your GPA there, and then retake the test in round 1 2027, and then clear the cutoff for your desired program. Let's say if your desired program was BBA, clear the cutoff for BBA, and then take a transfer there. Internal transfers within IBA are allowed, beta. You can take them, beta. So beta, so far IB offers the following programs. I'll talk about the programs here just in case if any of you is not clear on the programs and the list of the programs, then I'll get to the CBM part as well. So in the School of Business Studies, beta, we have the following degrees. BSBA stands for Business Analytics. Then you have School of Mathematics, NCS. But we have BS Eco here, BS Eco and Maths here, which has been one of the dual programs for past many years. And we have BS Social Science, of course. And we have the newest of the programs, BS EDS. In case if you want to pursue, let's just say, a master's degree, so both MBA and MS Management, Finance, Marketing, Islamic Banking, Finance, MBA, they would fall under this the business school. So largely MBA, and then you have MS Management, Finance, Marketing, they all fall here MSCS, MS Artificial Intelligence, Data Science, it would fall here. And then you have MS Economics, MS Data Sciences, or MS in Psychology, General Psychology, Development Studies, and Journalism. It falls here So we'll first talk about the CBM's pattern before I could talk about the IoBM's pattern, and before I could talk about IBA's pattern. So I broadly introduced the topic, or told you guys the topic. So within English in IoBM, in case if any of you wish to take IoBM's test as well, so we have vocab. This is a compulsory section there in IoBM's test, has always been there. Then you have another section, we call it structure and written expression. And followed by that we have a reading comprehension section. Then we have another section, we call it writing ability. Then followed by that we have finally maths, we call it problem solving. Then we have series. Then we have GK Ideally, historically, there are 25 vocabs questions always. Then we have 15 questions based on structure and written expression. Followed by that, we have usually 10 questions for reading comprehension and 10 for writing ability. Then we have 25 questions again from problem solving and data problem solving. And we have usually 15 questions of series and 15 questions from GK as well In case if you wish to copy this, please do, and we'll move forward. But if you guys have covered it, I would like us to move forward there. Please notice for IBA test, there's no fixed pattern. There has never been one. So you could have 20 questions straight from vocabulary, 15 questions from comprehension, 10 questions from grammar, same, and that goes for any of their tests. So even if you wish to take, let's just say, their MB test, their MS test, you would never come across a fixed pattern when it comes to IBA test. For IoBM, this is the fixed pattern. You would always come across these questions here. When it comes to IBA, like I said, there's never a fixed pattern. So again, you could have 20 questions based on grammar, 15 questions based on poems. This does surprise some of the students. So IBA tests historically have tested poems for almost a decade now, beta. They started introducing poems in 2018, so it's almost going to be a decade now. We could have 10 questions based on closed tests. What exactly are closed tests? We'll talk about that as well. So you could never come across, or you would never come across a fixed pattern when it comes to IBS test beta. In case if this is something that surprises you, and if you would like to note it down, please do, and we'll move forward. Actually, Peter, broadly speaking, for CBM's test, we do have a syllabus, so we'll be following a syllabus. For IBS test, we don't really have a syllabus. We have a broad curriculum, and that's what we'll be sticking to. So we don't really have a syllabus in the sense that we cannot really stick to a syllabus and think that, okay, fine, we're done with that. Because what IBA does is that IBA defines the terms or the outline of the course or the test very vaguely, in the sense that they would simply tell you your English should be so good that it should meet the standard of a college going kid, which is very vague. So we'll we'll be covering as many topics as we possibly can there, so which is why we don't really stick to a syllabus when it comes to IBS tests. It's a broad curriculum that we're sticking to, beta. This is the timeline of the course beta that we'll be sticking to, and I would like you to take some notes over here. So it's 11th of April as we speak. Our test is on 21st of June. Regardless of the program that you plan on applying to, CBM's test it is likely that it will be held 1 week after the IBS test beta. So it's going to be 28th of June. Could be one day before, that is 20th of June, but since they're also aware of the fact that IBS test is 21st of June, so they historically they usually give a gap of 1 week there beta. So we're starting off on 11th of April. We'll be getting done with everything by first week of June, and we'll be spending the remaining amount of time doing the full-in test there. We simply do not rely on our books only. We do issue a lot of PDF content there just to make sure that we're over practicing. So we'll be spending the remaining amount of time, actually a lot of time, doing the additional practice from the PDFs as well. And then we tend to take as many as a total of 12 full-length tests. For some batches, it's usually 10 tests, 9 tests, depending on when the batches are starting. But these tests have been designed intentionally harder than the actual IBS tests. And this is what we have always done, and we keep refining them, we keep changing them just to make sure that they do appear more difficult than the IBS test. And there is actually a good amount of thought behind that. We want students to experience the anxiety way before the actual test. We want them to understand that which questions they have to attempt first, which questions they have to attempt towards the end, how exactly they have to pace themselves through the exam, how exactly they have to budget their time. So we do 12 of the full-length tests before the actual IBS test in a full-length batch. And then we tend to do as many as 20 past papers, but you will be doing the past papers at home. In fact, you'll be doing these tests at home as well. And then for the discussion, but you'll be coming to the classes. So whatever queries or mistakes you may have, we'll be discussing them there here in our class. But so we start off with the basics of every topic. We slowly transition towards the harder examples and the harder topics. And then we'll be like I said, we'll be getting done with everything by first week of June, and then we spend the remaining amount of time doing the full-length test and doing the extra practice. But please copy this, and we'll move forward. So, but the next thing I would like us to talk about is how exactly the admission processes work. For IBA, we have two kinds of admission. We call it direct admission, and then we have through interviews. Direct admission means that you have gotten in, and then all you have to do is wait for your fee challan, and you have to pay the fee provided that you have the required grades. We'll talk about the grades in a bit as well. And then through interviews mean that you have another layer there. That means you have to appear in the interview, and then you have to do well on the interviews as well to be able to clear the test, to be able to finally get admitted there. And the interviews historically have had a cutoff as well. This basically means that, let's say, if they tell you that your interview score should be 87 to 90 percentage, hypothetically speaking, so if there are two interviewers and if one gives you 8 out of 10 and if the other one gives you 9 out of 10, your score would still be 17 out of 20, which basically means 85 percentage, and thereby this student would fail the interview. Why? Because apparently he is not meeting the interview cutoff. So even when it comes to the interview, you have to be exceptionally good there when it comes to the interview, because if you do a mediocre job when it comes to the interview, you would not be able to get in. So you need to make sure that you're doing well there when it comes to the interview as well. And for IBA particularly, the interviews are simply not a walk in the park. They have been historically very difficult in the sense that they start off with a very basic question such as describe yourself, and then they would want to know that why exactly you want to come to IBA, why exactly you want to study a particular degree, and then they start off with more general question that what exactly your interests are, what exactly your strengths are, what exactly your weaknesses are. And let's just say if you're someone who's coming from a sciences background, and let's just say if you have good grades in physics, chemistry, and maths, so they would want to ask you that why exactly you want to pursue a business degree. So you have to really justify to them that why exactly you don't want to pursue engineering and why exactly you want to pursue a business degree. Likewise, if you're somebody who's coming from a commerce background and if you don't have good grades in accounting, economics, and business studies, so you really have to justify to them that why exactly you ended up with bad grades there and why exactly it would not happen when you come to IBA. So for IBAs, the interviews have always been challenging. It's a difficult task altogether to be able to crack the interviews there. So I would recommend that you guys target the direct admission and not the interviews. Previously, we would not have a lot of difference between the direct admission and the interviews, but now the gap is slightly widening. So there is usually a difference of 6 MCQs between the direct admission and through interviews. So what I have always advised over the years is that if somebody is working hard to actually reach the interview stage, how about you work a little harder and try getting in directly, because that saves you a lot of headache, that saves you a lot of stress, beta. So once you are directly admitted, all you have to do is worry about your grades in case if you're not on gap year, and that's it. So once you have the grades, beta, you'll have the admission there, beta. So, but we'll talk about the grades and the percentage here, please. So, but IBA did make a change way back in fall 2024. They did not really announce it the way they should have announced it way back, but now it's resurfacing. And since there is a confusion among the students lately, so I would like us to explain this part. Even though this has been there for 4 years, and there have been quite a few issues there at IBSN, which is why they had to change their requirement, because in the past 5 years, there have been two times when the papers for A levels were leaked. That's one issue. Then we had COVID as well in the last 5 to 6 years. That's another issue. Then there was this day when Imran Khan was arrested, and some of the institutes or in some of the examination centers, the A level exam was cancelled. So that's another issue, which is why IB has had to change their grade requirement, and which is why they always used to come up with a new requirement, and that would always confuse the students there. So in order to simplify that, they introduced something way back in 2024, but they're formalizing it now. It has been there on the website for 2 years now, but this is what they're trying to in a way repackage the same idea but slightly differently. So I'll explain this. So if you're coming from an A levels background, beta, and let's say if you have A star or A in your A level, so that would mean that would count as 4 points. So it's no longer grade based. I'll explain that how it used to be first. So previously, beta, students needed 2B, 1C for the BBA, 1B, 2C for any of the BS program, except ACF and business analytics. This is how it used to be. But now there is a bit of flexibility. I'll talk about the flexibility here, beta. So now beta IB has moved to points-based system for even for the undergrad. Once again, understand what exactly I mean by points-based system over here, beta. So A star in A would count as 4 points. B would mean 3 points, C would mean 2 points, D would mean 1 point only, beta. So if you're somebody who has, let's say, 2B and 1C, so B means 3 points, B means 3 points, C means 2 points again, you would have 8 points. And we need 8 points for BBA, ACF, and business analytics, and you'll have the admission there, beta. But what if you have A, B, D? So with the previous system, this student would not have been able to get in there in the BBA program, but now this student with an ABD can also get in there in the BBA program, or let us say ACF program or business analytics program, because A would mean 4 points, B would mean 3 points, D would mean 1 point, and somehow you have a breakup of 8 points and you will be able to get in. What about ADD? So A means 4 points, D mean 1 point, D means again 1 point, so you have 6 points. So you're not meeting the cutoff requirement there for the prerequisite points there. So apparently you would not be able to get in there in any of the programs. So one thing that you must remember here is that they would only accept 1D. So even if you have 1 A star and 2 Ds, beta, let's say 2 Ds, even if you were to add it up, this would be 6 points. So you would not be able to get in with 2 Ds, beta. So there is more flexibility, but now it's point based, beta. This is it. With those of you, beta, who are coming from an intermediate background, beta, the requirement has not changed. And for BBA, ACF, and business analytics, beta, you need 65% of the marks, whereas for the other programs, beta, we need 60% of the marks, beta. So for all other programs, be it economics, be it social sciences, we need 60% of the marks. If you're basically going to pursue a graduate program, not an undergrad program, so the CGPA requirement is 2.5, beta. But this is actually less confusing. The next part is actually more confusing. A lot many people assume that they don't have these grades, or let's just say the required GPA, which is why they cannot really sit the test. That's not true. To explain this, I take a slight different approach. So we're going to explain that your driver, let's say your younger sibling who's still in grade 5, your grandparents, they can all take IBA test, beta. So there's no requirement to go and sit the test. Anyone can go and sit IBA test. This requirement would only matter once you have cleared the test, once you have been admitted there in the university, and then once your classes have started, then only will I be asking you for your final intermediate and A levels result, and then only, beta, you should have these grades, beta. So this requirement is not relevant until IBA asks you after your university has started. A lot many people did not sit IBS test thinking that we don't have these grades there in the AS, which is why we should not take the test. So that's not true, beta. So again, if you have to take any notes here, please do, and we'll move forward, beta. For IoBM beta, you need, if you're coming from an intermediate background beta, you need 55 percentage there. And if you're coming from an A levels background, you should have 3 C's at least beta. Sorry, 2 C's beta. But please take any notes that you may have to. There's one more thing that I would like us to talk about, because this is a usual confusion there, and people start there preparing and then they get to know that they didn't really have a subject requirement. So if you wish to pursue a computer sciences degree at IBA, or BS in mathematics there at IBA, or let's just say economics and maths there at IBA, you should have maths in your intermediate or A levels. Goes for CBM. If you wish to pursue, let's just say actuarial sciences, or BS in mathematics, or BS mathematics and CS, or let's just say any of the program that requires you to have a mathematics background, you should have maths in your A levels or intermediate beta. Actually, but I would like to talk about some of the common myths that students usually have regarding the IBS test, because it's very important for us to set the tone of the course here. Otherwise, there would be a lot of confusion. And since this is round two, some of you may have already appeared there in round one, and if you've already seen what the test is like, so this would make more sense. So, A, the test is not predictable beta. It's a very brutal test. It has been historically very difficult test, and it will continue to be difficult beta. And they keep on adding new topics almost every attempt. So there is no element of predictability there in IBIS test. Myth number two here is that I'm bad in mathematics. Let's say, but I'm coming from a pre-medical background. So is this really for me? Do you think I can do this, or do you really think I stand a chance of getting into IBS, or getting into IB or clearing IBS test? So to answer this question, beta, I always use the examples of these kids who pursue MD CAT. All their lives they want to become doctors, but for some reason they're not able to get into their desired medical colleges, and then they decide to drop their plan and they decide to pursue a different degree altogether. Let's say BS Social Sciences, BBA, could be any of the degree from IBA. And these are the kids who have not done maths in the last 3 years, and even they, when they start preparing dedicatedly for IBA, they're able to clear the test. But please notice I'm referring to the kids who have not done maths in a very long time. These are the kids who wanted to become doctors all their lives. And even these kids are able to clear the test. Why? Because they know how to actually study dedicatedly. So if you're somebody who's willing to put in time, beta, you'd be able to do fine. So if you're weak at maths, please notice it's just that you'll have to put in more time at home. It does not really mean that you would not be able to clear the test, beta. तो बस ये इतनी सी बात याद रखती हैं कि अगर आप बुरे हैं मैथ्स में तो आपको ज़्यादा एफर्ट पुट इन करनी पड़ेगी. Myth number three is that, which is again slightly funny in the sense that you don't really have to study for it. So you may bump into somebody who went to IBA 15 years ago and they would ask you that why exactly are you studying this much. So beta, please notice, for IBA the paper pattern keeps on changing every year. So 15 year would actually be a very long time for you to compare yourself to someone. So please notice for IBA beta, you have to study and you have to study very dedicatedly beta. I'll talk about the paper patterns and how the paper patterns have evolved beta. So before 2009, the test used to be fairly predictable. There used to be easy topics there beta, and there used to be no essay. There's no essay anymore, but they introduced the essay in 2009, and they discontinued in 2018. So the essay was there for 10 years, and there used to be easy topics. That was again 20 years ago almost. Then they introduced the essay, then they introduce more topics there. Then 2016 onwards, they started testing more SAT like questions there. They introduced poems in 2018. They revoked the negative marking in 2018 as well. So please make sure that you're not practicing as if it's 2009, because again, if you're going to prepare for IBAS test with thinking that you're going to have the same test as IoBM, let's just say, or SZABIST, you'll be failing the test beta. So for IBA, we need a different strategy than the strategy that we need for, let's say, CBM and SZABIST beta. So what we'll do here is beta will be over preparing, and most of our PDFs and most of our extra content beta, what we make sure is that we're over preparing when it comes to the maths portion there beta, and English as well, of course, beta. So we'll be doing all of this since we don't know what the paper pattern is going to be like. So the goal here is to be over prepared than simply being under prepared beta, and we want to leave no stone unturned when it comes to making sure that we're actually over practicing instead of simply practicing beta. अच्छा बेटा, बहुत सारे लोग ये क्वेश्चन पूछते हैं, so I'll just answer this here. So previously it used to be the case that this was more than 10 years ago, the students who would go to main campus would get 50% of the scholarships. The students who would go to city campus would get 100% of the scholarships. So basically the top 50% of the students from the test would always go to main campus, and the bottom 50% would go to city campus. Then they introduced the scholarship for the top 10%. So top 10% of the students would pay 50% of the fee. The remaining 90% of the students would pay 100% of the fee. This again is from the past. Again, this is from the past. Now, beta, regardless of your grades, your performance in the test, you have to pay full fee unless you apply for the scholarship. A lot many people actually do apply for the scholarship, which is why the scholarship is again getting very competitive there in the IBA. So given the recent financial crisis that the Pakistan has been going through for the past 3 years now, let's say, pretty much everyone is applying for the scholarship, and it's getting very competitive for students to actually get the scholarship for the past 3 years. Previously, it was easier than it is now, so you have to make sure, beta, that you're filling the proper requirement. There is actually a separate requirement to fill the scholarship form, so they would not really be entertaining you when it comes to the scholarship unless and until you have actually cleared the test. So once you have cleared the test, so you would be filling another form, which is a financial aid form, and in that form, beta, you are supposed to provide certain details such as the income, such as where you live, such as your utility bills, how many dependents there are in your family, your combined family income, your family's, or maybe your father's salary, father's salaries, tax certificate, and so on. And then on the basis of that, beta, they'll calculate that what kind of a scholarship or how much scholarship beta you'll be getting there. But once again, they will only be entertaining your scholarship application once you have actually cleared the test beta. So beta, I talked about this, that for IBA we have two board sessions, English and Maths. But here at Tutor Plus, we've broken it down into 4 portions: English, Maths, Reading, and Vocab. So we tend to basically keep reading and vocab separately from the rest of the English. Why do we do this, beta? For that, I would like us to go over some of the papers there to understand what I'm going to talk about next, beta. So just quickly go over some of the tests here.
Yeah.
So I'll go over an easy paper first. This was a 2009 paper. What you see right now is a closed passage. So a closed passage is basically a passage, and you are supposed to basically choose in the correct option from the given option that you see there at the bottom. So you would actually see that the entire passage is about one idea, so the next sentence would not be much different from the previous sentence, so it would be focusing on one entire broad theme there, beta. And then followed by that, we have another closed passage, but this contains basic vocabulary and grammar there. Then you have again closed passage, followed by another closed passage. Then you have reading comprehension, and this is it. This was 2009. Keep looking at how the paper patterns are evolving. So this not take long, but I would want you guys to see that how the paper have evolved over the years. This is another closed passage. Now, we didn't really have this kind of question there the previous year, that was in 2009. Until 2015, we used to have one attempt only. That is, they would have only one round back then. So we have another 9 questions based on grammar. We didn't have these the last year. We call them sentence correct. We call them sentence completion. Then you have more sentence completion, but they're based on vocabs. And then you have reading comprehension, and this is it, beta. Now, in 2011, the paper apparently was very different from the last 2 exams. You can see that they didn't test us on this either in 2009 or 10. And this, of course, must have been a surprise for the students who appeared there in 2011. You can see they started off with the meaning, not the word, with the meaning, and then you were supposed to choose the correct word for the meaning, not the other way around. So they put up meaning there: to chew over again as food previously swallowed and regurgitated, and then you were supposed to basically choose the word for that. So you had 10 of these. Then you have another 10 questions based on vocabs, but this time around they're testing this on sentence completion and sentence completion. So far there were 20 state questions, have been 20 state questions on vocab. Then you have reading comprehension, and it has a total of 14 questions. Then you have again sentence correction. You're supposed to choose the correct version of the sentence based on grammatical rules. That's another exam. That's 2011. We'll look at question 2012 now. So you can see that how the last 3 attempts did not have what they're testing students on over here. This is what we call para-jumble passages. So the passages have been jumbled, and you're supposed to put them in a correct order. Again, that must have been a very new thing for the students who may have been paying attention to the past papers only. This is again sentence correction. You have closed passages again. Then you have another set of you have sentence relation. You're supposed to tell how the two sentences are related. Then you have closed passages again. Then you have reading comprehension, and this is it. That's where it ends. I'm not talking about the maths portion so far, but just by the way. Then we have 2013 then. Again, it starts off with a closed passage, a basic vocabulary. I guess if you want to pay attention to the vocabs there. You have sentence relation again, beta. Again, closed passage. Then you have reading comprehension. This is it. Then you have parajumble passages again. Then you have sentence correction, and this is it. I'll just quickly go over 2 more papers here. That's from 2014 now. They again start off with sentence completion. You're supposed to complete the sentence based on the vocab. Focus on the vocab as well, beta. So beta, followed by that you have sentence correction. Again, for that you're supposed to know the grammar again, because we cannot really choose a correct version in the sentence without knowing the grammar. Then you have another 10 questions, and you were supposed to find out their synonyms basically, because it says similar in meaning. You could have opposite in meaning, that we call them antonyms. Then we have reading comprehension, and this is it beta. So the point I'm making here is beta, we have to treat reading and vocab separately from the rest of the English, because historically there has been a lot of reading comprehension and vocabulary, and if we take these two sections casually, we would pay a very heavy price. So if you plan on sitting IBS test, and if you don't plan on doing these two sections beta, or if you don't plan on working on these two sections, please notice you would have a very hard time clearing the IBS test. I'll stop here and I'll talk about CBM as well. Lately, a lot many people from last year have been applying to CBM as well, and there are multiple reasons for that. IBA is of course getting more expensive for a lot many people. IBA would not really be given a scholarship to everyone, so I have the students from round one from multiple tests, because there have been 3 tests so far. So I have students who got in there, but they are not joining the IBA because they're waiting on their scholarship results. Likewise, if they don't get in, so they have already taken the CBMs or IoBMs test, and they may go to CBM. Now, what's happening here is that CBM is getting good quality of students than it was getting before, which is why CBM has increased the difficulty level for its tests as well. So the question types and the difficulty level of the question has changed for CBM as well. And they have introduced another layer after the interview, and we call it group discussion, that we talked about earlier as well. So same goes for CBM, but if you don't plan on working on your vocab bank or your reading skills, reading comprehension skill, you would have a hard time clearing the CBM test. And this has happened for the very first time, that a lot many people actually failed the CBM test in round one. This was not the case before. People have always failed IOBM's test as well, but usually these are the students who have not worked hard at all. But this time around, I'm coming across students who did work hard, yet they failed the IOBM's test better. I'm not referring to IBA, I'm referring to IOBM, which is why I keep using CBM term, because it sounds the same. So I'd rather use CBM. But when I say CBM, you need to think of IOBM, because IOBM would have other schools as well in addition to CBM beta. So a lot many people did fail CBM's test, which is what I got to hear from a lot many students who are basically reaching us out in round two. That a lot many people actually failed the CBM test there in round one. So which is why you have to again make sure that you're preparing hard, preparing well for CBM's test as well beta. And for vocab beta, what we do is beta, we'll be working on two kinds of vocab. One is the classic vocab. Uh, we don't really update it as much because it's a classic vocab. Classic means it has not changed over the years, so the usage has not diminished or the usage has not changed over the years. The non-tutor plus vocab is something that you'll be coming across, or you'll be finding these from let's say difficult. You'll be finding these words from magazines, reading material they'll be issuing you. How do you do that? We'll talk about that in a different class, because it's an orientation class, but we'll be working on both kinds of vocab bank. But one is a classic, the other one would have vocabulary related to current affairs. For example, currently you do know that some sort of peace efforts are going on there in Pakistan. Previously, before that, we had a war going on, so war would have a different kind of vocabulary. Peace missions would have different kind of vocabulary, so we need to learn the words from current affairs as well to be able to do well there beta. So beta, this is the broad syllabus that we'll be sticking to for English, so please copy this beta. Yeah, Exhibit, this is for IBA because for CBM, it's the same syllabus that we just copied earlier. I'll just go over that again, beta. So just to be clear, I'll just write it here in case if any of you is appearing for both IB and CBM. So this applies for CBM and SZABIST as well. But if you're only appearing for CBM, just copy what is relevant to you only. But I'm assuming you guys have copied it. In case, beta, if you have not, please let me know. Abrash, beta, have you copied it? Kunut, beta, Rayan, beta, Ram, beta. So, beta, once again, this is important, and like I said, it's very important for us to set the tone there. If you're not basically working on your vocab, so you've already seen this through the papers. And for those of you who have already appeared there in round one, and if some of you may say, sir, maybe there were 10 words, there were 15 words, do we really need to work hard when it comes to the vocab? Because it would only have 15 of the questions out of 45 or 50. So, beta, if you take out the percentage, it's basically 1/3 of your exam. If you take out the percentage here, again, this is 30% of the exam. So we can not really have a casual approach when it comes to vocabulary, beta. Because when you work, when you're learning the vocab words, so even with a very decent vocabulary bank, you would not be able to get all of the questions right. But when you don't learn the vocabulary words, you would not be getting any of the words right there. So you increase your probability of getting most of the words right significantly when you have a decent vocabulary bank. A lot many people, what they do here is they come to these classes, they go home and they never revise what they study in these classes. Your maths will not improve unless and until you come to these classes, you understand what's being taught, and then you go home and then you redo what is being taught. So if you're not willing to put in your efforts to improve your maths better, your maths will not improve either. And once again, if you take reading casually, beta, a lot many people don't even know the obvious benefits of reading, let alone the benefits which are not so obvious. A, you're building your vocabulary bank. B, you're improving your ability of understanding something. C, you can write better, speak better. You can understand better. You can make better connections there in your brain when you're trying to understand and process the text. You're getting your probability of getting all of these reading comprehensions right because you're processing the text right there. But a lot many people, they don't even do academic reading, let alone the non-academic reading, which is why they do so poor when it comes to the reading comprehension questions, beta. So if you are not willing to do this, beta, you will easily fail the test. I'll also talk about how or why people fail this test usually. One of the reasons here is a lack of discipline, which is the most important of all the reasons there, beta. So if you're somebody who has this goal, not just hope or wish to get into IBA, but if you cannot discipline yourself in the sense that you don't know how to switch off your Wi-Fi, or if you cannot really switch off your Wi-Fi for whatever reason, or let's just say you can be distracted easily, you spend disproportionate amount of time watching reels, watching podcasts, uh, if you cannot really have a proper timetable to study, or let's just say if you study for one day and if you don't study for next 3 days, beta, so please drop the idea of getting into IBA. I'm not going to sugarcoat anything here for you. I'll just say it the way it needs to be said. I have had to teach 6,000 students for IBA over the past 15 years now. So I do say this with a lot of experience that if you are not really willing, actually, a total of 6,000 students, that includes the around 50% of the students for IBA. So yeah, so I do say this with a lot of experience that if you are not willing to take out time properly every day, and if you lack discipline, beta, you would not be able to get in. Lack of perseverance means that somehow you would want to achieve the result that people usually achieve in 3 months, and you would want to achieve them in 3 days, beta, since you're impatient. Or let's just say, since you are studying, so you would want to just get in since you have studied. That's how some people like to think. So you have to be patient because you'll only be improving by 1% or 0.5% every day. So do not really expect any miracles of yourself. You will only be improving, and you'll only be improving very slowly and gradually. So if you're somebody who's very impatient, or somebody who gives up very easily, or somebody who gets bogged down easily, or somebody who gives up easily thinking that I'm not improving, maybe this is not for me, I don't think I should do this, I think I should pursue something else. So beta, that means you have lack of perseverance. That means you lack consistency there. So no matter what you do, even you start making vlogs, you won't become Irfan Junaid on day one. Even if you start a YouTube channel, beta, you will not become Mr. Beast the next day. So likewise, eye-based preparation does take time. So if you're hoping that somehow you would be improving in 1 week, you're delusional, beta. It takes time, it takes patience. There are people who have been studying for this test for 2 years. Just because you could not get in, let's just say, in one of the attempts, or let's just say if you have been studying for your very first attempt and you have not taken IBS test before, but somehow you see that you're not improving as much as you think that you should be improving, and then if you give up easily, you would not be able to get in, beta. The other thing is lack of strategy. You would very easily come across a lot many people studying for the IBA from the SAT books. The two are very different tests. We've been saying this all our lives. A lot many people still don't understand this. Anxiety again is not as common in the sense among everyone, but it is very much still there. I see a lot many kids who are very well prepared, but just because of this one factor, they chicken out, and they mess up there, and somehow they're not really able to clear the test just because of this one factor. So if you're not keeping a good check there on your anxiety beta, this could again lead to a very bad performance on the day of the test as well. So you need to understand the only sure shot way for you to actually take care of your anxiety is by practice, and by making sure that you're doing as much practice as you can, so that when you come across your actual set of paper, you would know that I've already done this so many times before, so this one is not going to be any different, and you would be able to do well there as well, beta. That's a bit on the part of institutes and teachers. Of course, a student to teacher ratio used to be a problem way back in the days, is not much of a problem anymore, but it's still very much there. But the relevance of the material is, and the depth of the material is again very important, and the full and test that the students are taking again matter a lot, because if you're practicing for IBA as you should be preparing for CBM or SZABIST, then that would not help you. So the full in test, like I said at the beginning of the session, are very helpful because they help you understand that what questions you have to attempt first, how exactly you have to pace yourself, how exactly you have to budget your time, which questions you have to attempt first, do we have to go backward, forward. So we learn all of that from the full in test, beta, and all of this actually really matters a lot, beta. Another thing I would like us to mention here is that uh, you all have a wish, but there are more ingredients that we actually need there in order to clear the test. One of them is the attitude, that is seriousness. If you lack the attitude, there's no point in coming to these classes. And I remember way back in the days, people would call it aptitude test. The literal meaning of the word aptitude is a skills. We prefer the term test prep, but there are people who call it aptitude test. But even if you call it aptitude test, what exactly is an aptitude test? The literal meaning of the word aptitude is a skills. So you're here to basically improve your skills, but there's no way anyone in the world can work on your aptitude if you lack the attitude, beta. And we talked about the attitude before. So if you're somebody who cannot figure out or find time, good amount of time to study at home, if you cannot take out, let's just say, 4 hours till you have your exams, 3 hours at least, and then of course the entire day once you are done with your A levels and intermediate exams, if you go to school, or let's just say at least 8 hours if you're on a gap year. So this is not for you beta then. And again, this is for the undergrad program. The test for the MS programs or the MB programs are less competitive, so the hours requirement for them would be slightly different there. But let's just say again, if you're not willing to take out time beta, so this again would not be achievable for any of you. Actually, beta, these are the timings that will be following. Please copy them and we'll move forward. So, beta, one last thing which is not really relevant to the test, but is actually relevant to your life. देखें जब आपका O levels का result आता है, so you tend to decide कि which of this colleges you'll be going to, because then the seller would be your school or colleges. And in the professional life, the scenario is very different. In your professional life, it's basically the employer who becomes the buyer because he's trying to buy your skills, and you, on the other hand, would be the seller. So it's up to the employer whether he wants to actually call you for the interview or not. So your CV may get thrown in a dustbin. They may never get to call you for the interview. Even if they call you, you may not be shortlisted. So it's very important for every single of you to actually end up in a decent university, because once you end up in a good university, it actually takes care of a lot of things, provided that you actually do well there in the university as well. So please notice, neither IB nor LIMS would be a destination. They're only a stepping stone for you guys. But even if you end up in these university, you have to do well. But once you do well there, you do know that a lot many of these things will be taken care of बेटा. तो बस एक ही थोड़ी सी बात थी जो आपके लिए समझना ज़रूरी होती है बेटा.